大家好，现在俄罗斯跟乌克兰战争呢，不禁会让我们想起呢，如果有一天中国决定武统台湾的话呢，那么同样的事情会发生在，我们华人身上。所以呢，我特别就想采访一些我们澳大利亚本地的俄罗斯人，想聊聊他们呢对于这个事情目前战争对他们有什么影响，以及他们对这个事情怎么看。今天呢，我们就找到了一位俄罗斯人，一个非典型的俄罗斯人，一个俄奸。Hi Petro, thanks for being with us.
Hi Edgar.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you definitely don't understand what I'm talking to my audience. So basically, I introduced you as a traitor to Russia, or the Russian government. Do you admit that?
I call myself a proud Russian patriot.
Okay.
So I believe that the current Russian regime, Putin's regime, is unlawful, unconstitutional,
Yeah.
and it has been working against the Russian people for a long time. So it's a corrupt regime that has been exploiting the Russian people, the natural resources,
Yeah.
and finally it gained so much power, uncontrolled power, that it decided to invade a brotherly nation.
Yeah.
Ukraine is I consider Ukraine a brotherly country. There are so many cultural links.
Right.
And it's unthinkable that Russia is invading Ukraine.
Yeah, that's what I heard from because I interviewed someone from Russia and Ukraine. They all say that we are all brotherly country,
Yeah.
ever since, like
Yeah.
forever. But so we know that you're one of the few. I'm not sure is that correct? One of the few Russian community members here in Australia who actually anti this war against Ukraine. Is that right?
I don't have the exact numbers, but my sense is that there's probably the majority of Russians that are against this war.
Oh, really?
In Russia, yeah. I don't think the Russian community is very visible. Historically, it hasn't been very visible.
Yeah.
And only kind of the pro-government, pro-Russian government people, organizations have been visible.
They've been very loud.
Well, they just felt that they were authorized to speak and represent the Russian community. There are quite a few. My experience of Russians in Australia is that quite a lot come here for economic reasons. They like the freedoms, they like nature, they just want a better life for their family. So they come here and they focus on building a good life for their children,
Yeah.
for themselves, and they build careers, and they don't really engage with politics. They don't engage with the Russian government, the embassy, or
Yeah.
anything, and they just live their ordinary lives. They blend in with the rest of the Australian society. According
Right.
to the Russian embassy, there's about 60,000 Russians in Australia, but they're not very noticeable, I would say.
Okay.
So yeah.
Are you saying that most of them are like a silent majority who are against this war?
I don't have any evidence, but
Yeah.
my impression is that, I would say that the majority of Russians in Australia, they're against the war for various reasons. I think I'm a very principled opponent of this war and of this regime. There are hundreds of people like myself. We have a group on Facebook which is over 1,000 people, and we are against Putin's regime. But I think quite a lot of Russians in Australia, they're apolitical, but the war is the kind of the final line. The war affects everyone.
Yeah.
And I think the majority of people, they don't like the war, the effects of this war, even if they were sympathetic to Putin's regime.
Yeah.
I think right now they see how bad this war is for Russia,
Yeah.
everyone, and Russians here in Australia as well.
They're having a great impact on them, on their life.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. One of my friends who works in law, as a lawyer,
Yeah.
they told me that right now in Australia, lawyers who have clients from Russia, they tend to, just it's not just they don't want the money. It's just anyone who's going to court with jury. We have a very, very how can I say it?
Anti-Russian sentiment.
So very
right
small
now.
odds to win because the public opinion against the whole Russian community is so poor right now.
Yeah.
So does that affect you? Because your name is typically Russian, a typical Russian name. Yeah.
Yes. My experience is probably not very typical because from the very first day of the war, I've been so vocal against it, and I've built a public profile over the past year, voicing my anti-Putin opinions. So my Australian friends and just people in the Australian community who come across me, they see me as an ally probably, rather than a representative of the Russian community that might be pro-Putin, pro-war. So personally, I haven't experienced anything bad. It's only been quite positive. All my interactions have been quite positive. People are supportive. People say, well, those who talk to me, they say, we don't believe all Russians are like Putin and they don't support the war. So they are trying to make a distinction between Russians per se and the regime,
the pro-Russian government.
The Russian regime that started this war and is killing people.
Like you know, this YouTuber who call himself Aussie Cossack in Sydney. The guy.
Yes, of course I know him. He's a caricature of a Russian.
Okay.
He's
like the people are trying to distinguish you from you and that guy.
Yes, he's a clown. He's really a clown. He wasn't born in Russia. He was born here. He grew up here.
But he somehow grew some loyalty to the Russian regime.
Yes, absolutely. He traveled to Russia. He was educated in a religious school where he really absorbed lots of sort of pro-Putin messaging. And he came back here and he started peddling all the kind of all the propaganda, anti-Western propaganda, pro-Putin propaganda, and here he's definitely not a representative of the Russian community. Absolutely not. I haven't met a single Russian who says, oh yeah, he's a good guy, he represents Russians. And people are embarrassed of him because he's a conspiracy theorist, he's anti-Australian, there are just so many crazy things about him.
You know what? That's your own opinion because
of course,
I'm trying to grab him to have a talk with him somehow.
Of course.
Okay.
That's my personal opinion, and that's the opinion of my friends, people that I know. We know that he's built a public profile over the years, and he pretends to represent Russians in Sydney, Russians in Australia. The reality is he doesn't. He wants to run for parliament. We are determined to make it impossible for him to run.
Sabotage him?
Yes, absolutely. In normal, like
I know. Of course, legal.
By the book, by the rules. There are so many things that he said. He said that the goal of his organization and his own goal is to defend Putin from within the enemy state. So he called Australia
enemy state.
Enemy state. This is really problematic. So and I think any Australian who just finds out the facts, finds out the things that he actually said, they wouldn't be voting for him. So the way we want to sabotage him is by basically publicizing what he has said himself. It's on record. He's been publishing the Cossacks. They've been publishing a newspaper here in Australia, and they've said so many things in those newspapers. It's horrible.
Is it fake or from a different
anti-Australian sort of pro-Putin anti-Australian propaganda? I think right now he is trying to hide it because it will certainly damage his chances of getting into office. But we're determined to make it very visible.
I hope I can sometime have a chat with him and show him all you just said and just confirm him. Okay.
Of course.
Anyway, so that guy and you are very loud expressing your views. But for those people who are afraid to stand out, how this war is affecting them, I mean, in Australia, in the community.
Yeah. I certainly have heard reports from people that their children are experiencing some bullying at schools, and
just because they're from Russia.
Yeah, because they're Russian, and they're all the bad stereotypes. It's part of the modern culture, really. Lots of people just watch the news very carelessly, and they hear some things like the same way as there are lots of Australians who are very anti-China, right? Anti-Chinese.
That is a problem. Yes.
And this bias comes through just media reports, and there's some very poor reporting in the mainstream media, in Australian media, about China. There are politicians who are very xenophobic, really. And it's really problematic. So, and now the same is happening to Russians, to the Russian community. And I've heard a report of like a small shop owner. They're not even Russian; they're Belarusian, but their window was broken. Somebody threw a brick through the window. They're not supporting Putin or anything, and simply because they appear as Russian to somebody, they had their property destroyed. So it's problematic.
How do you think there's any solution to that? Like, is there any way to?
Absolutely. There's a solution. The solution is for Russians to voice their opposition to the war. That's one of the reasons why our organization, Svoboda Alliance, we organize protests against the war.
Right.
So in Melbourne, on 2nd of March, we started this daily vigil on Princess Bridge. So it's right in the center of the city. We stand there every day from 6 to 8 p.m. Displaying our messages. Basically, the original message was, I'm Russian and I stand with Ukraine. So we want to show that Russians, not all Russians support the war.
Right.
There are quite a few Russians who actually support Ukraine in this conflict.
Yeah.
And we stand for a different Russia. We identify proudly as Russians. We believe that there are lots of good things about Russia, its people, its history, culture, and we want to defend Russia against Putin's regime, and he's destroying Russia in its image, and he's hurting everyone. So what we're doing is we want to publicly show who we are. We don't hide that we are Russians, and I think if more Russians here in Australia come out and voice their opposition to the war, voice their opposition to Putin, then the mainstream public sentiment will change. People will see here that, okay, the Russians are actually, at least the ones who are here in Australia, they're not pro-war.
So are you saying that the stereotype is there just not because of Putin, but because of the community? They don't make sounds. They don't voice it.
I think. Well, my attitude from the very first day was that every single Russian is responsible for this war. Has to take some responsibility for this war. I take responsibility for this war because I haven't done enough to prevent it. And I think if more Russians adopt this attitude, then the war will finish sooner. And I believe, yes, there is some bias in coverage, media coverage, but I think that each one of us can do something about it. We can talk about our opinions. We can publicly, at work, in our social clubs, in our social settings, join protests. All of us can do it, and that would be the way of turning public opinion back in favor of Russians here in Australia.
But I think there's a reason why people just keep quiet, even when this war has effect. It's very respectful. When I was look at those photos, I was shocked. Like the Russian community was so loud. But is that going to be like a personal risk to you?
Yes, absolutely. There are personal risks, but I have all of my blood relatives, apart from my children, are in Russia.
Oh wow!
My friends,
do you think
my childhood friends are there. Of course, because of my public profile, there is risk to them. There's certainly risk to me. I want to go back to Russia. I'm just convinced, personally, I'm very convinced that the days of the Putin's regime are numbered. I don't think his regime will be able to withstand the impact of this war. Mm-hmm. So, and this gives me confidence to speak out more publicly. Mm-hmm. And I think, in a way, I'm kind of given license to all other Russians to speak, because I've taken such a public and direct and anti-Putin position that if anything is to happen to Australian Russians, it would be me, right? But the more Russians start speaking out, the less likely
you're more safer. The safer you are.
I will be safer, but they will be safer as well. Okay. The state, and the same in Russia, and this is what Alexei Navalny has been saying for years, is if it's only 1,000 people or 10,000 people who are protesting, who are in opposition to the regime, then of course the regime has the necessary means to crush them. Right. But then, if we have hundreds of thousands, if we have 1 million people coming out, then the regime will not be able to do anything with them. Mm-hmm. There is strength in numbers. The problem is the Russian society is very atomized. Each person is kind of worried about their family and just their immediate concerns, and as a result, we cannot really mount a strong opposition to Putin, mm-hmm. Putin's regime. And it's understandable. In Russia, I can understand the fear that people have. In the first days of the war, I really pushed my friends and my relatives in Russia to take a public stand against the war. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped, because I realized that I'm not being reasonable. Mm-hmm. But Russians here in Australia, they're certainly safer. Whatever risks they have is more removed. It's more remote. So I believe that, there are several hundred who have joined the protests here. They've been well documented, well publicized. Their faces are
nobody's hiding their
YouTube,
face.
They are on social media. So a few hundred people have already taken that risk, and the rest of Russians, here, if they're really against the war, they have no excuse. Frankly, I don't think that they have any excuse. Mm-hmm. There could be some personal circumstances. Some people might have them, but the majority of people, they could make a more public stand against the war.